COVID-19 vaccination is rising in many vulnerable African communities thanks to EU-funded WHO-led project. So, Africa, for those of you who don't remember, was, I think, the least vaccinated continent. And it also had very low excess deaths, very low COVID rates, and part of that is presumably attributable to relatively high vitamin D levels, and some of it, I suspect, is some of the lack of excess deaths is attributable to the lack of vaccine uptake. Mm-hmm. So now that it's 2023, and even the diehard COVIDians have largely stopped taking their boosters, what's a poor pharmaceutical company to do? Well, what you do is you get in bed with the EU and the WHO, and so lucky for you that they'll have you, and you go into Africa. Because we don't do nefarious things in Africa, do we? No. So here's a few of the things that the WHO has to say. The same month that they're impressing upon the weird world that salt is the enemy, here's what they're doing in Africa. March again, 2023. At the start of 2022, I'll just begin at the beginning of the thing. COVID-19 vaccination coverage is on the rise in some of Africa's most fragile humanitarian settings as a 2-year project funded by the European Union enters its last 4 months. At the start of 2022, the COVID-19 vaccination rate was less than 5% on average in the 16 participating countries. That rate is now closing in on 30%, the continent's average, among the 14 countries whose data was available in January. The countries participating are, I'll read it, Burundi, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Guinea, Liberia, Madagascar, not technically Africa, but I'll let that slide, Mali, Mozambique, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan, and Tanzania. To achieve those rising numbers, national health workers trained by WHO experts have been administering vaccines in urban hubs, remote villages, refugee and displacement camps, workplaces, public spaces, and elsewhere. We don't wait for the people to come to the vaccination sites. We go to the rural areas to allow these populations to be vaccinated without having to travel and abandon their work in the fields, which is very precious to them, said Dare Rabiu, Regional Director of Public Health, Population and Social Affairs in Maradi, Niger. Rashida Ibrahim, a nurse at a health center in Kurangaso, apologies for the pronunciation, elaborated on that way of working. Quote, "Every morning we vaccinated people against COVID-19. When there's nobody left to vaccinate, we get on the motorbike and go to a village to vaccinate there also." A few more quotes from this WHO article. Mozambique has been one of the project's success stories. Nearly 2/3 of the country's population has been fully vaccinated. Among that group is Julieta Jose, I don't know how to pronounce it, a resident of the Malika camp for internally displaced people. Quote, "I'm very happy about the visit from the team because some people here in the community were never vaccinated," she said. "It's the best way to prevent COVID-19. I told everyone I know to come and get it." Said another person who was trained to provide these vaccines, I know that if they all get vaccinated, my community will be free of this bad disease." That's it. So, if I may have my screen back. There's a lot to say here, of course, but one of the things that jumps out at me is that there's this technique being done here, which we've seen throughout since COVID first entered our thinking in the public, in which you take someone who doesn't know and has no way to know whether or not the thing that they have been told is true. COVID will kill you. You must stay inside. These vaccines are the only thing that will protect you. You must get vaccinated, right? So authorities come, in this case, WHO trained authorities, and they come and say, this is what to think. In this case, these vaccines are the only thing that you can do to protect yourself against a disease which will probably kill you. I don't know if that's actually what they say, but it's something like that. So the authorities come and they tell you what to think. And then they put a microphone in front of your face. And they say, what do you think? And then you say what you've been told to think to the people who told you to think it. And having said that, your words are documented and it's produced in pieces like this. But that's not data. It's not even anecdote. What that is propaganda. What we are seeing, what we are hearing here is propaganda that is masquerading as true life stories, as what people believe, what people on the ground feel and know that their friends and their family members need to do this thing because they know it's true, but they don't know it's true. They were told this by the propagandists, and the propagandists then got them to record themselves saying it and then produced it to the rest of the world, who then help with the propagandists' campaign. That's all this is. There's no evidence here. There's no new information here. It's propaganda, pure and simple.
And it's propaganda, completely agree. It's also marketing. One has the sense that this is the marketing department masquerading as the medical department.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is creating pretexts all the way along. It's a little bit like incentivized reviews. You ever run across a product that has great reviews and you think, okay, this is the one, and you buy it, and then you discover that there's a mechanism by which they induce people to leave great reviews, and that's the explanation for why anybody liked the thing at all.
Right.
It's a lot like that. And, actually going back to the WHO, right, and the salt story.
This is the WHO too.
Right, I know, but that story also has the marketing department all over it. Right? Because it gets me when they say, the problem is sodium. It's the intake of sodium, right? No. You're talking about a molecule, right? It is sodium chloride. It's not the only salt you could make with sodium. But the salt that we take in is sodium chloride. That matters. Sodium on its own is explosive when combined with water, right? And chloride on its own is highly toxic. This salt is an item that is very common in our environment, that has its properties that we can engage with, and we can even know how to conceptualize it based on the hydrogen bond that links these two things together. And so when they say sodium, it sounds sort of clever and sophisticated that they would refer to it in this chemical way, right? Rather than say salt, sodium. That sounds very sophisticated, but they've indicted their scientific...
they do also mention monosodium glutamate, and there are other things that we eat that have sodium in them.
I know, but my point is, scientifically speaking, it's not what they mean. And the marketing department, yes, it's trying to throw lots of stuff at you that sounds scientific. And the point is, the scientists weren't involved. It's like a car commercial in which the people are driving the thing on the roads in a way that would violate the warranty and would result in the burning out of some component, but the engineers were never consulted, right? It's marketing, pure and simple.
Well, it's even worse than that.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And you know this. I fear that the scientists were involved, but the scientists aren't scientists anymore.
Scientists are marketers.
The scientists are marketers, or the kids who were excited about discovery and exploration, and who went into science for that reason, quickly came to understand that that's not the world of modern science. And some of them jumped ship into other things. And some of them stayed in and, fought the man, as it were, in the WHO and, all of the rest. And unfortunately, I think it's most at this point, of the people who are actively doing science in these realms right now have at some level accepted this as what science is. Either that, or they're living with such constant cognitive dissonance that I don't understand how they don't explode. So I think that the answer is that they have forgotten or never knew what science actually is, and have accepted this piss poor replacement that has no chance of discovering truth or of making the world better as what science is. And that's the science we're advised to follow, not the actual science.
Yeah. And it does raise questions, Who are they? I really want to know. And I really want to know why they do not recognize that they are in violation of something this important, elevated, and universal.
This being the Nuremberg Code.
The Nuremberg Code.
Well, of course, science and medicine are related but distinct.
No, but both things are called out in this document.
Okay.
Right?
So, I wonder, of course, about what will happen now that there is a mass vaccination program that is going forward in Africa, excuse me, not that we don't have a long history of messing with Africa and Africans, but my prediction is that we'll see a rise in excess deaths, excess mortality, and as a result of this mass vaccination program. And I have to wonder what they're going to blame it on. There's a lot of things possible. Maybe it'll be salt intake.
I would also just point out that this would also fit a long pattern of destroying the control group so that in the future we are not able to deduce what actually happened to us.
Yeah.
The idea that there was a continent with a low vaccination rate and then we might be able to look at all of the new pathologies and patterns that emerge and say, interesting that they also appear to be at a much lower frequency in Africa. So how diabolical would you have to be if this was consciously on anyone's mind, the idea that there are patterns of harm that would be detectable if Africa functioned as something of a control group or contained enough people to compile a retrospective control group, right? And you actually decided to harm them too, so that that was impossible? You'd have to be pretty darn diabolical.
Yes, you would.